there are incentive compensation systems within ShoreBank, and those incentive compensation systems require that there be performance on not just earnings, but also on development performance and conservation. It's truly a triple bottom line company. So the bank could, or the holding company, any unit, could produce earnings that are just off the chart, okay, in terms of reference to budget or anything. But if the goals are not met for development or conservation outputs, it sort of becomes interesting, but there's no bonus, okay? But on the value system, I'm going to ask Karen and Bill. Why don't you comment? I mean, let's see. Karen's been with ShoreBank, about a year and a half, 2 years now? And Bill's been about 2.5, 3 years? So, time flies. So how did you respond?
Nothing like a cold call when you're out of school. Yeah. I actually think Ron's anchor point about the bonus structure is critical. We sit around at the bank in senior management meetings and we actually talk about this because there really are 3 things that are measured, and your bonus sits on that. So you kind of have to pay attention. One thing that's also very interesting is then how that filters down. And I don't work on the mortgage side, but my recollection is that there's work there where some staff are more heavily salaried than they would be in a peer institution to incent for longer term behavior than you would be if you were commission driven on some of those same types of roles. So it is very interesting when you get to nuts and bolts of how you get paid. More broadly though, it's really a question of what kind of people do you hire, how do you nurture them, and what are the kinds of things you actually talk about at work. And in an institution like ShoreBank, you're always talking about anchoring in communities, what are the long-term things that will strengthen communities, and then what are the types of things that can bring environmental sustainability into these same areas that might be underserved. So I'd go from the compensation structure all the way down to then how you hire and then promote skill development at the staff.
We at ShoreBank International, the international consulting arm of ShoreBank Corporation, recently had our annual international meeting in Shanghai. And I was giving a presentation about one of the things we do in our work, and I was chided by Ron because I did not make explicit that among the things why we do what we do is to alleviate poverty, to promote social inclusion and the like, which is all a way of saying that the mission comes first. And if I've heard that once, I've heard it many times. And it's, I think Ron would say, it can't be merely implicit, it must be explicit. We have to repeat that to one another and make it part of everything we do every day.
Ron, can I add something?
Yeah, please.
I think that people really like the chance to innovate and to contribute. That's a part of work. And they're very proud to have meaningful work, and that's sort of I think that's our huge recruiting advantage that we have. Is people say, well, if I come here, my work has purpose beyond the job.
Yes. I might add one last point as we're waiting for the next question, is that ShoreBank is owned by a combination of charitable foundations, national church organizations, a couple of large banks, and a couple of large insurance companies. The ownership, particularly by the foundations and the charitable organizations from the very beginning, helped to set a tone for what the place was all about.
A few of the MBA students here this year have been working on a housing project with Hurricane Katrina, and it's being led by Digger Phelps, former basketball coach here. And one of the biggest challenges is finding families who can sustain a loan for a house, even if it's at a very low cost. What is your take on what's going on down in New Orleans right now and the revitalization efforts in terms of housing?
I'm really sorry, but because of the microphone, I just couldn't hear the bulk of your question.
Just what is your take on the revitalization efforts that are going on in New Orleans right now, and what do you think further can be done?
So since you were just there.
Oh boy. I was just there a week ago, but only it was to talk to a group of people who are working on that issue. In the end, I don't know that I know enough. ShoreBank manages a company called NCIF, National Community Investment Fund, and it makes equity investments in local development banks in the United States and also minority banks. And there are investments in 2 banks right now in New Orleans, and those investments preceded Katrina. If you talk to people who are working there, the universal complaint is that resources are not flowing fast enough, okay, that there aren't enough things that are being done. There's probably a fair amount of truth to that. On the other hand, there are good examples of other work that is going on. I've saying to Pat walking over here, I've been on the board of what used to be called the Enterprise Foundation, now Enterprise Community Partners, probably for 25 years. And they've been very active in New Orleans doing a lot of work. Other national organizations are doing work, and there are a lot of local people doing work. My own sense, but I really wouldn't want to be quoted because I don't know enough, okay, and is that things are happening that everybody would like them to move much more quickly than they are, that the flow of public monies has to go through different government regulatory processes. They're probably not as efficient as they could be. If you stay downtown, it all looks like nothing ever happened, okay? But a year ago, we were with the chairman of one of these banks that I mentioned. Our entire NCIF board was, Mary and myself, and we drove around and saw some really bad stuff. We did drive through the 9th Ward. Most of the houses were gone, but there were still a few houses that were just straddling streets, okay, that they just hadn't been moved yet. A year ago, there were no grocery stores open